And
Yay.
we are live. Hello, everyone. Oops. Welcome to another episode of Hey, What's New with D&D. I'm Donnie. I'm a senior developer advocate covering Southeast Asia, working for AWS. And
Hi, I am Derek. I am also a developer advocate and I look after Australia and New Zealand. And today we're going to have fun because I don't think the demo gods are with us, but we'll see. Back to you, Donnie.
hey, as Derek mentioned, together we're bringing you demos of latest, hottest, and coolest features from AWS to help you get started. All right. So I just want to do a quick intro for this for one new to this series. So Hey, What's New is a new bi-weekly show where Derek and I we bring you our picks from the AWS What's New blog and show you how to build something from what AWS has just released with code and demos. And if you have any questions about this new service, this is a perfect chance for you to ask those questions, share your feedback, or even request features that haven't been covered yet. And also, this series is going out to AWS channels and communities. And today we are streaming to over 10 AWS community channels across Asia Pacific as well as on global AWS Twitch channel. Okay, so today is the second episode of Hey, What's New series. And on the last episode, we talked about AWS Step Functions Workflow Studio. And if you missed the previous episode, that's the link for you. And going back to this episode, now, Derek, what demos are you brewing for today?
Yeah, thanks, Donnie. So today we are going to talk about Flutter and how to use it with AWS Amplify. There's a question in the chat already about from Sequence Matcher about will this be for beginners? No, it won't be for beginners. What we'll do, we'll start off quite shallow, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into implementation details, etc., etc. So we'll go and learn about Flutter, learn about AWS Amplify for those who don't know about it, and we'll also go through building an application with it in 15 minutes. And
15
yes,
minutes.
it'll be fine.
Okay. So, Derek, before you take this away, let me say thank you for picking up Flutter and Amplify. For me, I'm not a backend developer, and sometimes I really want to know how to develop like a front-end apps, like cross-platform apps, but I just don't know how to start. So this is going to be a really good, my first stepping point. And please take it away, Derek.
Awesome. Thanks, Donnie. Yeah, anybody, any questions during this, just put it in the chat and we'll answer that as we go. So we're going to start with a bit of an introduction of what is Flutter and Amplify and where did it come from. So I'm going to start the story with this. So if you don't know AWS Amplify, AWS Amplify is a set of tools and services to build out awesome backends for your front ends on AWS. So as part of Amplify, we have a number of client libraries, which are all open source. So what you're seeing here, I'm showing you the JavaScript implementation of Amplify. And way back at the very dim and dark past, there was a issue that was raised by the community to add Flutter support. Now, as you can see, it got a lot of attention, and a lot of people thumbs it up, commented on it. And of course, as we build 90% of our products and services on direct customer feedback, we listened at AWS and we started to implement what the Flutter integration with Amplify would look like. So this second tab here is the RFC for the actual Amplify Flutter integration. Again, is all open source. So the RFC was asking our customers how we're going to implement this and any feedback that you have on it. And so that's what the RFC, and that came out 21st of July last year, 2020. And then almost 6 months later, we then implemented Amplify Flutter, and it went GA on the 15th of February 2021. And so, obviously, when it went live, we had the awesome Amplify docs that you can see here, and we built a nice little getting started guide. So I'll take you through a tutorial of how to build your first app using Flutter with AWS Amplify. And then as time went on, we then started to add different categories to Amplify support. So for those of us who don't know Amplify, it has a number of categories, what we call categories. And categories are a way of encapsulating actual behaviors and actual use cases that you can use Amplify for. So an example would be authentication and authorization, we classify as a category. Another one may be APIs, which we classify as a category. So as Flutter has went along the implementation, we've added categories to them. And then finally, this month, we released a null safety support Flutter. So null safety Flutter, as you'll see, is a very elegant, well, Dart itself is a very elegant language, and null safety is a very important part of Dart. So as Amplify Flutter has matured and come along, we've added in the features that the customers have wanted.
Cool.
So what about Flutter itself? So how to install it? So if you haven't used Flutter again, the development experience in Flutter is fantastic. From an installation, writing your first application, all of that is fantastic. And so look at the Flutter docs, get started. It's very cool. Flutter under the covers uses a language called Dart. And it's a little link called Dartpad, where you can start to play with Dart and start to do things like, how do I implement loops? How do I implement stuff like animations? It'll give you little examples that you can run in the web browser, and it's quite powerful, and it's a very cool language to code in. If you've used C#, which I've coded a lot in C# or Java, Dart is really, really simple to pick up. It's a really nice type-safe language and nice to use. And so that's like the introduction, but let's actually see it in action itself. So what I'm going to do now, and this is where the demo gods are going to be really kind, is we've had problems with screen sharing, of course, as you do. So I'm just going to screen share now my VS Code. So with choosing your IDE to run your Flutter applications, you could use Android Studio, you could use all the usual IDEs that you'd use, but this one, that's the one. But the one I choose to use is VS Code. So that's not it. That's it. So hopefully this will work. So this is a really simple Flutter app. So with Flutter, you've got Dart will actually compile the code, so the Dart code, into native binaries. So you've got Android folder, which will hold the native binaries to deploy into an Android device, and you've got the iOS folder that will hold binaries for that device. Flutter will also support web, and it's also in beta for desktop. So it is a true cross-platform experience. But let's build our first app. So the entry point to a Flutter application is usually in the lib folder. You've got a main.dart. And in here, I've just instantiated what's called building like a shopping list. So if you say you're going to the shops and you need to build a list, we're building out a shopping list. And everything in Flutter is a widget. So you've got two types of widget. You've got a stateful widget and a stateless widget. So what I'm doing, I'm extending a stateful widget, and I'm just building in some themes. But the main crux of this is this view. So I'm going to build out a view now for you and show you how easy it is just to build out some UI with Flutter. So the first thing I need to do is actually need to write the constructor. And in the constructor, I call a create state. So the state is when it's stateful widget, you need to maintain state. So that's where that is. At the minute, this is the state, which I have a controller that has a title. And inside the this state, I've got to override a build method. Inside the build method, I have my UI. So inside a scaffold, which is like how I contain my UI, I'm going to build some components or some widgets. So inside the first widget, I have a navigation bar. So it's simply a title, it'll say my shopping list. Inside the next widget, I'll have a floating action button. So this is a little plus that'll float down the bottom of the application, and if you hit add, it will pop up a modal from the bottom. But what is that modal? I have to define that next. Not that one. So here is what we call the new item view, and it will be a column and have a text field, and inside it'll have a prompt that'll say no groceries here. So that is basically the UI. And what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to run this on a device. So because of the great integrations you've got in VS Code, you can choose what simulator you want to run this in. So I'm going to run this on an iPhone. I'm going to hit F5, and it's going to build it and run it on an iPhone. So as I'm not sharing the right screen, I'm going to now share my iPhone and show you what it's built. So let's stop that. And then choose my iPhone 12 and allow. And there you'll see, oh, gee, that's terrible. You'll see what it's built. Let me try share my screen instead. Let me move that across. This didn't work in the rehearsals, but I'm sure it'll, testing and production is a thing, and it'll completely work. So, yeah, there we go.
Yep.
So there.
It looks good.
Yay! So so this is my shopping list. So if I want to say add an item, there's my button, and I can put in an item like cheese. So that's the UI. But what I need to do now is think about what sort of data I want to store inside my app, and this is where Amplify comes in. So with Amplify itself, we can start modeling our data. So if I go to sandbox, go amplify.com, I can start modeling my data that I want inside that app. So without an AWS account or anything else, I can start thinking about how to persist my data in this project. So I'm going to create a blank schema. I'm going to create a new. Oh, this UI. This is what happened earlier. So it's not working. Let me try something else. So if I go and stop sharing that screen, share a different screen. This is live, so we're having fun with live demos.
Don't worry, Derek. The demo god is still with you.
No, that deserves me. So this is that. So if I see that a bit, so this is where I can model my data. So I've built my UI. Let's model some data. So the first thing I want to do is give the first object a name. So I'm going to call it shopping list item, like so. And with this data modeler, I can also add fields. So I need an item name to actually store my name. I need to say, well, without an item name, this item is not an item, so it's required. And then I go add, so I need an indication of is this shopping completed. So if I've got the bought the item, I can have is complete, and this is a type Boolean because it's either true or false. And that is my simple data model. And so the next thing I need to do is I need to test that data model. And this is the real power of Amplify Sandbox. It will take me through steps of how I can integrate the Amplify libraries into my app. So it's picked up cross-platform Flutter. I could also have native. I could go web, but I'm going to do Flutter today because that's what we're talking about. If I didn't have an existing app, it would take me through the steps of how to create an app. But I've got an existing app. It would then take me through the steps of how to set up the Amplify CLI and how to pull down this configuration. And then the next bit is how to set up the Amplify project to use data store, which we'll use for persisting our data locally and then syncing it to our backend, and how to set up iOS, the iOS pod file, how to set up Android. All of that stuff is all here that I can copy and paste. Which is not showing. I can copy and paste it into my application, which is cool. So this saves a lot of time when you're configuring the libraries. And then at the bottom, it'll show you how to then implement data store libraries. So here we have our create, our update, and our delete items. So what I tend to do then is after I went through those steps, I build into my application, and this is the next demo I'm going to show you, a repository pattern. So the repository pattern itself, and we go then for the share screen. We did the share screen done, which is great. There. So I'll show you, I've implemented everything. So I went through the steps, and now I have thinking about implementing the repository pattern. So it is this one. So here I have my application. It's the same application. So inside I've got my main theme. I've got my shopping list view that we just created before with our nav bar. And inside I have created a data folder. And inside the data folder, I have a repository pattern. So the repository pattern just abstracts all of those data store queries that I showed you earlier. And it's just a nice way of doing things, because if you abstract those queries, you can then test your app or mock the actual API calls out themselves. So inside that, I've just put my save, update, and observe. So what that does is I can exercise my app and actually go through and use it. So if I run my app again, and this time I'm going to try F5. You should see, actually, I'm just going again. Sharing my screen. Looks okay so far. Yep, I can see that. I'm deploying to iPhone 12. Pull up my simulator. It slowly comes up that the application is running, and I can add and remove data. So these complete works, all of that works, and I can still add data. So the next stage is actually to deploy this to an AWS backend. So currently we've got everything is stored locally. We don't have anything in an AWS account. So that's the next step when you're using Amplify and building out your applications. You need to then deploy it into an AWS account. So once you've deployed it into an AWS account without changing any code, so I should quickly show you where that step is. So that's the final step. So if I stop this screen, I'll actually keep going. So once you've deployed it into an AWS account, let's go and stop that for a second while it re-renders, and I will show you this.
So Derek,
Yes.
we have a couple of questions now.
Good.
Okay, so while waiting, you're back with your screen share. Okay, so I will ask you after this.
Okay, so the next stage is to deploy to AWS. So as you deploy into AWS, you can either use an existing account or log into one you've already have, or create a new one, in which case it'll take you through the steps. once you do that, all of your configuration and all of your model that you've just built will go into an account. So I have an account already set up, and if I stop sharing that, apologies for the screen sharing shenanigans that we're going through, but yeah, we found an issue. So then, if I can try and share this here. So once you share it, what will happen is you will see what we call the Amplify Admin Ui, which I'll bring up now. Amplify Admin, yeah, that's it. So what you'll see is your application, but now configured with a backend. So you will have things, this is where you can add other features to your application. You can manage users. You'll see that the data model has been deployed. You can add function storage. You can add your API, which is also being deployed. So you have a shopping list API. So this means now that without doing any more code changes, if I run my application on Android or on iOS, so I'll just quickly get it running. This one. Again, I'll share my screen. Sorry, I forgot. Share that screen again. Screen 2. So that means that I can then, let's see how it works. Come on, render. What? Render again. If so, that means that it's not changing at all, is it? I can actually stop debugging this on iOS, and it's not working. Yeah, let's try it back to VS Code. So I can go boop. If I go back into my VS Code, which is completely stuffed now. So if I, in theory, let me let me get rid of. I think the problem is VS Code itself. It's not rendering. If I could just share my screen, I'll bring the two apps up. There's one. So this is a bit better. So I've got the one app on the left, one app they've deployed into Android on the right. Oh, and that's Google Play. And everything's it's there, isn't it? So that's the wrong app. So my Android emulators decided to play funny games with me as well, but I can just deploy it quickly. If I go stop it there, I'll just stop it on my, which you can't see my VS Code I've got open here. I'm changing the emulator type to Pixel, F5, which you then should be able to see as it deploys. Onto my Android. Yep, so we're having excellent demo god. So could this anything else go wrong, Donnie, for a demo?
No worries, all right. I mean, this is still a really great demo. I can now I really understand that the why do we need to have this built with Flutter and what the features of AWS Amplify. And we have a couple of questions on the chat, and this is something that I totally relate. Like for example, we got a question from CGiang123. The question is, do you think if Flutter will have a promising future? And this is totally relevant because for me, I'm a beginner in this space. I know there are lots of cool frameworks and also toolkits, and probably that you can help to answer this question. And my own question, the original question is why Flutter, Derek, if we want to build a cross-platform applications?
Yep. So, yeah, very relevant questions. I hear that question a lot, actually, about the will Flutter support, will it keep going, all of that stuff. So, absolutely. So that's why I started off with going through the life cycle of Flutter and how we started from an issue originally back in JavaScript land, all through the way through to an RFC, and then into implementation, because it's very much customer driven. So if the customer wants Flutter, wants to see enhancements to Flutter, wants to see different things appear in the Flutter toolset, then get on to the GitHub, raise issues, and +1 ones that you care about. And there's a team of developers working on this Flutter implementation as well. So I don't see it going away anywhere very soon.
Cool.
And also why Flutter, Donnie, is because if my screen share had worked, I would have been showed you what a fantastic developer experience it is working with Flutter. It just makes building cross-platform apps so much easier, and so it's a lot. It just makes sense. I've used other technologies like React Native, Xamarin, but the Flutter developer experience beats them, in my opinion.
Okay, so you mentioned about the development experience. We also have another question from CGM123. I saw you that you are building with Visual Studio Code. Is this something that we can do with the IntelliJ Studio as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've used both to build out Flutter apps, IntelliJ and VS Code. I prefer VS Code just because I just like its style. I've used IntelliJ many years ago, but I just prefer the way VS Code handles things. But by all means, use IntelliJ if that's your preferred editor. Everybody's different.
Awesome. We have another questions coming, and it's all about testing. Okay, so I think this my direct questions to you, Derek. How do you usually test the applications when you're building with Flutter and also AWS Amplify?
Yep. So I touched on using patterns to enable testing. So testing is all about componentizing your code so you can bring it into testable units. So using repository patterns, one way of doing that. What I didn't show was Flutter itself has testing hooks. So when you create a vanilla Flutter project, it will actually scaffold a test suite for you. So you can use the UI testing methods that you'd use in other frameworks with Flutter as well. So you wouldn't test at the component level, but you test interactions at the view level, and you also test your API level, and then at the back end you test that business logic as well. So what you do when you're building apps as normal, Flutter will support that. In fact, makes it easier.
Awesome. And also, can we plug Amplify with device form? We have another question from Jones. So the objective is to test the application across different platforms and OS versions.
Yep. So you can use tools like device form. So we have a service called device form where you can actually spin up applications across different operating systems and versions and use it just to make sure that it is absolutely the hardest thing to do when you're building mobile applications is make sure it works on older versions, specifically Android, because they support more historical versions than necessarily iOS will.
Awesome. Okay, so now I get my starting point. So build the view, the client with Flutter, and then enhance, give a superpower, like a lot of features with AWS Amplify. Is there any like another takeaways that you want to share with the audience, Derek?
Sorry, Donnie, I missed that.
Any takeaways, and if you want to share your last bit of advice?
So watch out for sharing screens. Don't assume it'll always work. But no, seriously.
Not the demo god, but screen god.
Yeah.
Okay.
So takeaways are: if you're thinking about building a cross-platform application, look into Flutter. It could save you heaps of time and energy. And likewise, all front-end cross-platform applications need that back-end to add the really cool features. And Amplify will save you heaps of time building those as well. So together, they're almost like they're meant to be together in my mind, because they both really speed up that application lifecycle, application acceleration, getting your application into the hands of users as quickly as possible, and then getting their feedback and building the next greatest application.
Cool. Okay. So that is it for the second episode. Thank you again, Derek, for walking us through with your code and wonderful demo. And for you who are watching live or VOD, please share your feedback and comments. And if you want us to cover a specific features, let us know as well. You can reach out to us, to either of us, on our Twitter handles, or send an email to this address. There you go. Okay.
Nice.
So thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and happy coding. Goodbye, everyone.
See you, folks. See ya.